Growing a pineapple plant from a store-bought fruit is one of the easiest things you can do. I started when I was a teenager back in Australia. I grew the tops. I didn't grow them for long because I lived in a climate where we had a frost and a cold winter, and I didn't have anywhere to put them to overwinter them. Here in California, I've got a place that I overwinter them. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how to select a pineapple. I'll go over the ones that I started, and I'll go over one that my wife Robbie started last year. So the first thing you need to do is get a ripe pineapple. Now, because we live far from the tropics, the pineapples in the store are picked early. They're still green. Most of the pineapples that we have here are coming from Costa Rica, so they harvest them early. This one has a little bit of yellow on them. I'll show you at the store how to pick a good one. This one looks riper than that one. Pineapples are non-climatic fruit. That means once they are separated from the parent plant, they don't continue to ripen. So this one was similar to this one last week. It's changed colour, but that doesn't mean it's going to be any sweeter or riper. All it's doing is changing the outside colour. The pineapples that we get from the store are actually unfertilised fruit, so these don't contain any seeds. The main pollinator of pineapples in the tropics, whether it's South America or Central America, are hummingbirds. This is a piece of art Robbie's friend Vivian gave to her. Kind of represents a pineapple if you look at it. So they have species of hummingbirds in Costa Rica, where most of these have been grown, that would pollinate pineapples. The growers are growing self-sterile plants. So on the farms, they mainly grow one variety, maybe two, and a self-sterile plant, the pollen won't be able to fertilise the flowers. So the hummingbirds can come in, feed on the nectar, and you'll produce pineapples that don't have seeds. When I go to a store, there's a couple of things that I look for to select a pineapple that's as ripe as I can find. It's tough to find a good pineapple, but there's a couple of things that I look for. Colour is the first indicator, and then I jiggle the crown around to see if it's got any give. On more bumpy varieties, I would look for flat eyes, but the pineapples we get here in Southern California are pretty flat to start with, so that's not a real good indicator. A riper pineapple should have a more sweet, fruity smell. This one here has a lot of yellow on it. Pineapples ripen from the bottom up. Out of the ones on the top layer, that one seemed to be the best. All the other ones were much greener. So I moved that box out of the way so I could see what's underneath. The pineapples in this box were a little smaller, but they appeared to be riper. Pineapples are sold by the piece. So now I had to decide whether I wanted a bigger one or a smaller one, so I compared the two to see which one was better. That one was the one I selected, but this one looks a little riper, and the top jiggles even more. Even though it's smaller, it's got better colour. When I apply a little thumb pressure, it gives a little bit. Hopefully the brown spot doesn't mean it's overripe. The other one was green and it didn't budge. So I went with the smaller one. Over the years I've grown a number of pineapples here. Mostly I've given them away as gifts. But now, since I'm buying a lot of fruit to make my fruit drinks, I'm going to start growing the tops, and eventually I should be able to grow some of my own fruit. A fully ripe pineapple is something you'll never forget. The first thing I want to do is remove the top. Now, I just rock it backwards and forwards, and the top should snap right off like that. There's very little flesh on it, so I can put that to one side. Then I take the fruit and I use a nice sharp knife. This is a Jinsu knife. It's an American-made knife with a Japanese name, and it's made in China. It's a very good knife. You want a really sharp knife. The other thing I need is a skewer. So the first thing I do is, carefully as I can, slice the top off, then slice the bottom. This I can compost. So now I've got a flat top and bottom. I take the skewer and push it into the core. The core is actually the stem, or the flowering stem of the plant. And as carefully as I can, I start removing a little bit at a time. Because a pineapple is sold by the piece, I try to waste as little as possible. I have made a tea out of this once. It didn't taste that great. In Costa Rica, they use a lot of pesticides and herbicides, so I'd rather not consume this. I could try to wash it, but I wouldn't know whether I've got all the pesticides and herbicides off it. So the best thing I can do is compost it. If I grew my own, I wouldn't have a problem making a tea out of that. So the next thing I need to do, this seems to have a fairly small core, so I'll just cut down to the core. You can feel the knife as it hits the core. I'm using a wooden cutting board because I want to protect the blade. It's just a matter of going around like so. And once I get the pieces off, I store them in glass containers. So I can cut these down into little chunks. And just follow the core around. Because I'm going to turn this into a drink, I'm not fussed about the shape of the pieces. But if you wanted to use it in a salad or whatever way you want to serve it, you can just cut it into nice size pieces like that. If I was going to put it on a pizza, I could slice it very thin, and then I've got nice little pieces I could drop on a pizza. Because this one's been setting for a week, it's very soft. I try to make sure that I don't fill it to the lid. It's got a plastic lid. Because pineapples are acidic, I don't want it to be touching the plastic. I'm not going to take all the eyes off. I've just removed as much skin as I can. If you want to, you can come back and clean it up a little more. The core itself, I wouldn't have a problem if I wanted to make a tea out of it, but sometimes it's soft enough to eat. So there's that one. This one's a little greener. The core's going to be a little harder. So the core's got a lot more fibre than the flesh. And this one's going to be harder to separate. But when you're at the store and you can jiggle them around really good, then the top just pops right off. I'm just removing the crown, just work it backwards and forwards until it comes off. So now I've got two crowns. I'll repeat that with this one. Again, I can put the skewer in, and that gives me something to hold. This one is a lot greener. And just follow the core around. When you get it to this point, you can actually see the core. I'll just shave a little bit more off that. Because it's a compound flower that turns into compound fruit, if you follow the eyes down, you see that they'll go straight down to the core. So these were the original flower stems. So now I've got 2 containers that I'll store in the fridge. Some of it I will freeze, and that'll last me a week in the fridge, and if I can store it in the freezer, it'll last a couple of months. So I'll just put this in another bowl. I'll use this first. Now to prepare the tops, I just peel the leaves back. So the bottom leaves are where the roots are going to form. I prefer to remove as many leaves as I can. As the plant establishes its root system, it's going to just draw moisture through the leaves. The centre is still green. I'll put these in a container with about 1 inch of water. Now that I've taken the top off the fruit, it's already starting to dry up. I plant them right away. I don't wait until they callus over. I've done it both ways and I haven't seen any significant difference. I like to plant them in water right away, and the main reason I do that is when the fruit is attached to the plant is supplying the fruit and the top with moisture. When this is attached to the fruit, this is taking moisture from the fruit. By letting it callus over, my thoughts are you're allowing it to dry up, which is perfectly fine. You can set them to one side and plant them later and they seem to grow pretty well. But I'm breaking the water contact if I let them dry, and if I plant them right away, the water will continue to be drawn into the leaves. It's just worked well for me, so I'm going to continue to do it that way. As you can see, I removed most of the leaves, and I may as well just put both of them in the same container for now. So some of the other ones that I've been growing. This one is one that Robbie got last year, and she brought it home. Someone at a store broke the top off. She asked if she could have it, and they said sure. She brought it home. She started it in water, and once it got established, she put it in this pot and handed it off to me, and I've had it in my back room. So we've got a back room, a bedroom that's facing south, and I've had it sitting in bright light but not direct sunlight. So here's a couple of ones that I've been growing. This one here, I guess it's been here for about a month. It's setting roots at the bottom. It hasn't produced any new growth in the centre. So that one I need to pot up. Out of curiosity, I did an experiment. I took a pineapple top, I cut it in half, and then one half I cut it in half again. So I had 2/4 and a half. I just wanted to see how they would grow. So these don't look that promising, but they're still green. And this one has already started to send up a new leaf. I don't need to do that because I've got plenty of tops. Now with the tops, sometimes they start getting brown on the tips, so I just trim those off. And this one still has green in the centre. It's starting to set root, so that's a good one. This one is starting to rot at the base. All I do is just scrape that off with my thumbnail. I just clean that up a little bit. And again, this one, the tips are going brown, so I can trim those off. And the center is also dying. If the center dies, I just pull it out. That's no good to the plant anymore. And if there's loose leaves, they can come out too. They don't need those. And this one here, I've already done that too. It's starting to set out roots too. So this has got a loose leaf. It doesn't need that. Actually, it's got a couple of loose leaves and the little brown piece on the end. You can just trim those off. The first pot I put them in is like a gallon pot. If you grow them in a gallon pot, they will set fruit when it's small because the roots get constricted and that forces the plant to fruit early. Of course, if you've got a small plant like this one, the fruit's only going to be small. So I've got this one going. Once it starts to fill up the pot with roots, I'm going to plant it in a 5-gallon pot. That way I can bring it indoors during the winter, or if I want to leave it outside in zone 10A, it's perfectly fine. It'll do good outside. The only issue is we have cooler weather. Overnight the temperatures drop. So if I want it to continue to grow, I can bring it indoors and it'll continue to grow. If I leave it out in my garden over winter, a lot of my tropicals, they shut down, they remain green, but they don't put on any extra growth. So every plant that I've planted is going to grow a little differently. This one's starting to set root, but it's also got new growth on the inside. So I've got some new growth on the inside, and on the outside here it's also starting to grow a pup. So I'm going to leave this, plant it up, and maybe I'll have 2 plants in the one pot. This one here, it rotted at the base, so this was about 1 inch longer, and the bottom rotted. So what I did was I brushed it off with my fingers and it continued to set root, and it's also got new growth on the center. So this is a smaller cutting, but it's starting to establish itself. Sometimes I like putting them in cups, and that way you can see when the roots are growing. You can also see whether the water needs to be changed. I change the water every day, and I try to get into a habit of doing that, but sometimes I leave it for a couple of days. The sour cream or yogurt containers, they work too. Yeah, a number of fruit that we grow don't always produce seed. Papayas sometimes develop without seed. Our pepinos often develop without seed. So a lot of fruits can grow without fertilization. Not everybody's going to want a spiky indoor plant, and that's a problem that's easily resolved. All you have to do is tip prune them. You take the point off, and that'll make it safe for children and pets. This variety here has a smooth leaf. Some of them have more spines on the leaf, so this is an ideal choice. Some of the indoor pineapples that I've seen are very spectacular, especially when they're fruiting. They're a beautiful plant to keep indoors and move out during the summer. So I happen to have mine indoors right now, and I like to just trim the tips off. That way I can safely work around it. So I think I've covered pretty much what I wanted to say on this. As I get my pineapples growing, I'll come back and do another video on them. And I guess with that, thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Goodbye.